The professional environment surrounding Caitlin Clark's debut in the WNBA resembles a hostile workplace more than a standard athletic transition. While Clark has broken numerous league records and generated millions in revenue, her starting salary remains a fraction of the value she brings to the organization. Despite her role in transforming the league's visibility, the institutional response has been marked by a noticeable lack of protection. Her arrival as the first overall draft pick was widely regarded as a financial and cultural turning point for women's basketball. For the first time, the league was forced to implement charter flights for its athletes, moving away from commercial travel. Arenas that previously struggled with attendance began selling out in minutes, with secondary market ticket prices rivaling major pop music tours. However, the anticipated hero's welcome was met with immediate on-court hostility. The level of physicality directed toward Clark early in her career suggested a targeted campaign rather than routine rookie hazing. This tension reached a peak during a game against the Chicago Sky, when Chennedy Carter delivered a blindside shoulder check that sent Clark to the floor. The league's initial response was a common foul, which was only upgraded to a flagrant violation after significant public and media pressure. The delay in disciplinary action suggested a reluctance by the league to protect its most prominent asset. Beyond the physical play from opponents, a disconnect appeared to emerge within her own organization. Analysis of game footage showed numerous instances where Clark was open for high-percentage shots, but was bypassed by teammates in favor of more contested options. This lack of on-court chemistry led to questions regarding internal resentment, potentially fueled by Clark's significant endorsement deals and her immediate status as the face of the franchise. The organization's public responses to these observations remained largely non-committal. This friction extended to the league's established veterans and former icons. Before Clark played her first professional minute, established players like Diana Taurasi publicly suggested that a difficult reality was coming for the rookie. Rather than standard veteran commentary, these remarks were interpreted by many as a signal of institutional gatekeeping. This conflict has come to represent a divide between the legends who built the league and a new era defined by rapid financial and cultural expansion. The most visible instance of this divide occurred when the selection committee left Clark off the Team USA Olympic roster for the Paris Games. Despite her statistical performance and unprecedented drawing power, the committee cited a lack of experience, selecting players with lower statistical output. This decision was viewed by many analysts as a deliberate message from the sports establishment that commercial success would not grant entry into its most exclusive circles. Throughout these events, the Indiana Fever front office maintained a strategy of calculated neutrality. Rather than issuing a public defense of their star player following the Olympic snub or the physical targeting on the court, the organization provided sterile statements focused on the season at hand. This silence suggests that the team prioritized its standing within the league's hierarchy over the public advocacy of its lead athlete. The current state of the WNBA is a conflict between two distinct forces: an entrenched organizational culture and an unprecedented surge in market value. Clark's presence is a primary factor in the projected rise of the league's media rights from $60 million to potentially over $200 million. While she represents the most significant financial asset in the history of the sport, she remains at the center of a cultural struggle. The league now faces a choice between preserving its traditional internal dynamics and embracing the logistical and social changes required for global expansion. The outcome of this tension will determine the long-term viability of the league's recent growth. The financial structures of the league are currently undergoing a period of significant realignment, primarily driven by the exponential growth in viewership metrics. In previous seasons, a WNBA game on a major network would rarely exceed 500,000 viewers. By the conclusion of the 2024 season, games featuring the Indiana Fever consistently drew audiences between 2 and 3 million people. This shift has altered the leverage held by the league during media rights negotiations. The previous valuation of roughly $60 million per year was based on a niche market model. Current projections, influenced by the sustained interest in the 2024 rookie class, have moved the target toward a multi-billion-dollar deal over the next decade. This creates a friction point between the league's current revenue distribution and the players' demands for a higher percentage of basketball-related income. The upcoming negotiations for the Collective Bargaining Agreement, or CBA, are expected to be the most contentious in the history of women's professional sports. In late 2024, the Players Association signaled its intent to opt out of the current agreement, citing the rapid influx of capital that had not yet been reflected in player salaries or benefits. Under the existing structure, even the highest-paid veterans earn a base salary of roughly $240,000. When contrasted with the millions in ticket sales and jersey revenue generated by a single player, the disparity becomes a central pillar of the labor dispute. The league's leadership is now tasked with balancing the demands of veteran players who feel they have been underpaid for decades with the reality that the new revenue is largely tied to a small number of high-profile young athletes. This economic surge has also accelerated the timeline for league expansion. The entry of the Golden State Valkyries, followed by announcements for teams in Portland and Toronto, indicates a shift in the perceived value of a WNBA franchise. Entry fees for expansion teams, which were once negligible, have climbed to over $50 million. These new organizations are entering a league that is fundamentally different from the one that existed 5 years ago. They are expected to provide state-of-the-art practice facilities and dedicated medical staffs, amenities that are currently inconsistent across the league. While teams like the Las Vegas Aces have set a high standard with private facilities, other franchises still share space with community centers or local colleges. The pressure to professionalize the entire infrastructure is no longer a luxury, but a requirement to remain competitive for free agents. Tactically, the game itself is evolving to accommodate the gravity created by long-range shooters. In traditional WNBA schemes, the offense was centered around post-play and mid-range efficiency. The introduction of a player capable of scoring from the logo has forced defensive coordinators to extend their coverage, creating more space in the paint for teammates. However, this has also led to a more physical brand of perimeter defense. Coaches across the league have admitted to a trial-by-fire approach, where defenders are encouraged to be as physical as possible within the rules, and sometimes beyond them to disrupt the rhythm of elite shooters. This tactical physicality is often framed by the league as a sign of competitive intensity, but analysts note it also serves as a form of institutional resistance to the changing style of play. The merchandising logistics have struggled to keep pace with this demand. In early 2024, the primary manufacturer faced significant backlogs, leaving fans unable to purchase official jerseys for months. This logistical failure resulted in millions of dollars in lost revenue during the height of the season's popularity. The bottleneck highlighted a lack of foresight within the league's corporate offices, which had seemingly underestimated the market's appetite for player-specific branding. This inefficiency has pushed players to take more control over their personal brands. The signing of significant endorsement deals with global corporations like Nike, Gatorade, and State Farm has allowed individual players to achieve financial independence outside of their league-mandated salaries. This independence creates a new power dynamic where top-tier athletes are less reliant on the league's approval, further complicating the relationship between the players and the front office. Within the Indiana Fever organization, the internal management of this transition has been marked by a period of restructuring. The coaching staff faced intense scrutiny for their initial inability to integrate a high-volume passer into a system that had historically been one of the least efficient in the league. As the season progressed, the data showed a clear correlation between increased pace and offensive success, forcing a departure from established playbooks. This shift in philosophy was not without its casualties, as several veteran players saw their roles diminished in favor of a faster, more modern transition game. The resulting tension in the locker room was often visible during televised timeouts, reflecting the broader struggle of an organization trying to redefine its identity in real time. The media landscape surrounding the sport has also undergone a permanent transformation. Traditional sports journalism, which often ignored the WNBA or treated it as a secondary interest, has been replaced by a 24-hour news cycle focused on player rivalries and statistical milestones. However, this increased coverage has also introduced a more polarized discourse. The intersection of sports, race, and gender has become a focal point for national commentary, often overshadowing the technical aspects of the game. While the league has benefited from the visibility, it has also struggled to manage the narrative. The lack of a clear, unified message from the WNBA leadership has allowed external pundits to define the season's narrative, often leaning into controversy rather than the growth of the sport itself. The discrepancy in player travel remains a point of contention despite the introduction of charter flights. While the league eventually funded charters for the regular season, the initial reluctance to do so was cited by many as a failure to prioritize player safety and recovery. The logistical hurdles of coordinating private travel for 12 teams were significant, but the delay was perceived as a lack of investment in the league's most valuable assets. Moving forward, the expectation for charter travel is now a baseline requirement, alongside improvements in off-season training support and year-round housing. These overhead costs are rising at the same time the league is trying to prove its profitability to potential investors. The global influence of this era cannot be ignored. International players and scouts are observing the WNBA's commercial explosion as a blueprint for European and Asian leagues. The talent pipeline from the NCAA to the professional ranks is more robust than ever, with collegiate NIL name, image, and likeness deals preparing young athletes for the business side of professional sports long before they are drafted. This means the incoming classes are more media savvy and financially literate than their predecessors. They enter the league with existing fan bases and pre-negotiated contracts, reducing the rookie status to a technicality. The power shift is moving away from the league's central office and toward the individual athletes who command the attention of the digital native audience. As the league moves toward the 2026 season, the Clark effect is no longer a temporary surge but the new baseline for operations. The franchises that have leaned into this change by upgrading facilities, embracing data-driven coaching, and prioritizing player marketing are seeing record-breaking season ticket renewals. Those that have resisted, clinging to the modest growth models of the past, are finding themselves marginalized both on the court and in the standings. The internal war between tradition and transformation is reaching its conclusion. The data suggests that the old guard's attempt to gatekeep the sport has largely failed, as the sheer volume of new fans and capital has overwhelmed the existing structures. The long-term sustainability of the league depends on its ability to transition from a single-player narrative to a broader competitive ecosystem. While one individual may have been the catalyst, the league's survival requires that the increased viewership extends to all 12 and eventually 16 teams. This requires a level of parity and professional standards that the WNBA is still working to achieve. The upcoming years will determine if the league can successfully institutionalize the current growth or if it will remain a fractured organization, torn between its history and its potential. The strategic decisions made in boardrooms today regarding media rights and labor relations will be the deciding factors in whether this period is remembered as a fleeting moment of popularity or the beginning of a new era in global sports. The focus now shifts to the 2025 offseason, which is expected to see record-breaking movement in free agency. Players are looking for organizations that offer more than just a paycheck. They are seeking environments that provide the marketing support and infrastructure necessary to compete at the highest level. For the Indiana Fever, the challenge is to build a championship-caliber roster around their central star, while navigating the complexities of a locker room that has undergone significant public scrutiny. The front office's ability to recruit veteran talent willing to adapt to a new style of play will be the ultimate test of their leadership. The silence of the previous year must be replaced by a clear competitive vision if they hope to capitalize on the momentum they currently possess. The outcome of these overlapping conflicts, economic, tactical, and cultural, will define the next 20 years of women's basketball. The league is no longer a small, struggling entity seeking validation. It is a high-stakes business operating under a microscope. The individuals currently in positions of power are being held accountable by a fan base that is more engaged and informed than ever before. Every foul, every roster decision, and every corporate statement is analyzed for what it reveals about the league's true priorities. In this environment, there is no room for the gatekeeping and internal resentment that defined the 2024 season. The only path forward is a full commitment to the growth and professionalization of the sport, regardless of whose ego is bruised in the process.